So in today's video, I'm gonna be breaking down the two most requested pairs that I dropped a list and you guys picked GJ and XAU USD, which is gold, as the most requested pair. So we're gonna be breaking down gold to start off from scratch and GJ as well. I'm literally gonna chart this up like if I was gonna trade it, and I'm gonna break down everything that I see starting from the weekly. Like we'll do a top-down analysis, and I'll tell you guys what we could even expect for the next few sessions. So let's get right into it. So as you can see, this is XAU USD. We're on the weekly time frame, so we'll just do a top-down analysis starting from the weekly all the way down to like M15. So right off the bat, first thing that I see is this. So we'll start off in general, and then we'll mark our way in. We'll do a top-down analysis, how I said. So notice this impulse to the upside, right? We have this push to the upside. This push to the upside created this area of demand right here, right? So this area of demand right here. This previous contrary candle before the push. You see this one? Not this one, because this one's touched right here. So this one is the one that's not touched. Let me mark this again so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So this one, yes, it's the previous contrary candle before the push, but it's touched here. This one is not touched right here. So this is our true area of demand because it's an area that is not touched. We want our zones to not be touched. When we touch it, is that what price is using it to continue the move. So notice how this area of demand created the push, we pull back into it, and then we got this other push to the upside. So keeping this area of demand in here in mind on the weekly, we could break it down as well with these. So we have this one that was created coming off of this zone right here, this weekly one right here, and we also have this area up here as well. This area here, this area demand, and this area demand here. These are possible areas to keep in mind for price to pull back into later on in the future. So keeping that in mind on the weekly, this is the main things we're working with. This area of demand that created the push, we pull back, we got this push again. So when we got this push out of this area of demand, we created this area here and this area here. So if we go down to the daily, let's break this down. So on the daily, this is in confluence right here. So notice this area of demand right here, pretty much the one that we marked on the weekly, this previous contrary candle before the push. Notice how on the daily, it's this area right here. So on the daily, it's this area of demand, and on the weekly, it's this area here. So it's a very close area together. The daily and the weekly are in confluence. So this is a strong, this would be a strong area of demand. So it's very likely price will fill this void sometime in the near future and pull back into this area. If we were to break past this area of demand, we would know that nothing is stopping price till this next target down here. So keeping that in mind, let's actually break down this here. Here, there's no area of supply coming on the daily that we're using here. If you notice, that we'll break this down even more. So if we go to H4, check this out. Let's break this down specifically, because there's a specific area that price is using here. So check this out. On H4, notice this area of supply, right? This area of supply, this previous contrary candle right here. On H4, right here, how we got this push to the downside. And then you can see how it's not touched. And then notice how, let's see here if it's more specific. Okay, so notice here how when we touch this area, pretty much we got this push to the downside. So as soon as price touches this area supply, you can tell that we're getting a pullback. So this pullback, we have to ask ourselves to where could it be. So notice this. Notice how specific these areas are. Notice how this area of supply was created. We had this huge push to the downside. This push to the downside was only into this area of demand that created the push. And then now that we're pushing up, we respected this area of supply up here on H4. So now we have to ask ourselves, where could this pullback, this bearish pullback, pull back into? And we have this area here. Very likely price is going to touch this area here on H4. So notice this area of demand right here. This area of demand right here, this previous contrary candle gave us this push to the upside. So these are the main areas that we're working with right now. We have this area of demand down here, and then we also have this area of supply up here. This one, this previous contrary candle that created this push to the downside coming off of this H4 supply from the left. So keeping all that in mind, let's go to H1 time frame now. If we go to H1. Okay, now that we're in H1, notice this. So this is what we're working with more recently. So now we have to keep this in mind. Notice how we have this void to right here, right? We have this void and this area of supply. So this is there because in trading, it's not 100% price is going to do this or this. It's either price does this, and if price does this, what could price do? So you have to ask yourself, you can't just stick to sells or buys. You have to keep in mind, if the sells come in, where could they come in from? If the buys come in, where could they come in from? And where could they go? So notice this area of supply right here, this area of supply on H1, very likely price will use this area of supply. Let me mark this correctly. This area supply right here, very likely price could pull back into this area to continue the move to the downside. Now we have to think, if price breaks past this area of supply, there's literally no area of supply here. All this is touched already. All these previous contrary candles are touched. This is the only area of supply that's fresh. Once price breaks past this area, if it does, there's nothing stopping price in this void right here. So there's literally nothing stopping price in this void right here. If we break past this, just know price could pull back all the way up to this area here, being the H4 supply right here. So this is what we're working with. Very likely price could pull back into this area of supply to continue the sells into this area of demand. So very, very likely London will pull back into here to continue the sells up to down here. And then we have to see what price does once we're in this area of demand. If price respects this area of demand, then we will likely fill this void. If price breaks this area of demand, then we know that price could just continue pulling down to this area down here. So you have to ask yourself, so if price does this, what can price do? If price does this, what can price do? So very likely price is going to pull back here. This very likely will work. A scenario like this, price pulls back here, something like this, and then we pull back here. Now we have to see what price does once we get into this area here. If we break past this area of demand, we could pull back all the way to this area down here. If we respect this area of demand, just know we could fill this void right here and pull back up into this area here. So that's what we're working with for XAU USD. Now let me see. Okay, so let's go to GJ. So GBP JPY. Okay, so let's break this down. Let me just delete this. Okay, so same thing. We'll start from the weekly and we'll work our way down all the way to H1. So very, very interesting. So this is actually pretty good. So notice this. On the weekly time frame, we could identify this area supply right here, right? This previous contrary candle right here. You could tell that it was used right here. We use this area for a pullback to continue the bullish move. So now keeping this in mind, that this area was used right here, there is nothing stopping price on the weekly to up here. Obviously this is going to take a lot of time to play out, but this is the actual true form of supply and demand on a higher time frame. And you're going to see how these previous contrary candles, how they're used. It could take up to a few years to touch them, because this is obviously on the higher time frame, but they respects it. So check this out. On the higher time frame, we could identify that we use this area of supply coming literally from January 2016, and then we touched it here literally 6 years later. You can tell when we touch this area here, I'll just mark it so you guys can see it. So notice how when we touch this area of supply literally 6 years later, how we get this bearish volume. So these are not just random areas. So now that we broke past this area here, you can tell we're breaking past. There's nothing stopping price up into this next area up here on the weekly. Keeping in mind areas of demand on the weekly. Let's see. I don't want to mark this one just yet because we need a push. We need to break these highs to be considered an area of demand. So if we go to the daily, let's see what we're working with. So on the daily, let's break this down. Okay, so let's see. Let me see. I'm looking for a very specific area. Okay, so pretty much this here, you can tell that price is bullish. We're just pulling back, but you can clearly see that price is bullish. So keeping this in mind, we have to look for possible areas for price to pull back into to continue the move. So very likely areas for price to pull back into on a higher time frame on the daily would be this area of demand. So we got to identify areas of demand, which would be this area down here. This area here is the only area of demand that we have on the daily, because this one here is being used. So notice this one right here. Notice how specific these areas are. I'm not going to mark the whole candle because this was a big wick, so this is probably news. So we're not going to mark the whole zone like this, so it's not so crazy. But you could tell how the price respected this zone. So we'll just mark it from here like this, so it's not so crazy. But notice how we respected this area. So we got this push, we pull back into it, and then we're getting the bullish volume now. So areas of demand that were created off of this area would be this area down here. And we could also keep in mind this area here as well. We could just mark this one, and maybe there's a H4 confluence along with it. So look how clean this looks. On the weekly, we know we're bullish, and then on the daily, notice how we're pushing up, and we're just respecting areas coming from the left. This is the most recent one. We push up, and then we create this new area here, this new area here. So now we go to H4 and exactly what I told you. So on the daily, there was probably a confluence with H4. Look at it right here. This previous contrary candle on H4, and I say this one and not these because these are all touched here. You can tell this is the previous contrary candle that's not touched. So this is the daily demand, and if I mark it here on H4, notice how they're in confluence pretty much to the pip, marking it from the tip of the wick. So we have this H4 and daily demand in confluence, and then same thing here, the daily and the H4 in confluence as well. So these are two very, very likely areas for price to pull back into to continue the move. We could also even mark this one here. And then as far as areas of supply right now, it seems that we're working with this area here, this area right here, this area here. So now let's go to H1 and see what we're working with. So if we go to H1, okay, so we could clean it up a little bit and notice how this H1 was in confluence with H4. So notice on H1, it's this area right here. So we can mark it a little bit cleaner. Like that, this area that gave this push, you can tell that price touched it, and then now we're getting a reaction off this area. So let's see what price could do. So we know that we're bullish on a higher time frame, but we have this area of demand here that price is very likely going to pull back into in the near future. So now that we see this on H1 that we're respecting this area, we got to see what, let me see what M15 is doing. Okay, so we have to mark these areas now on M15. So notice this area of demand right here. This area right here. And we could even mark this one right here. This is the true area of demand right here. This is where the push was created on M15. But this is also an area of demand that price could respect. So you just have to mark both because you don't know which one price is going to react off of. So if price were to react off this one, it reacts off this one. But if it breaks this one, we would keep in mind that price could pull back into this one here. So most recent areas of demand that we're working with is this one here and this one here. The only thing that's happening right here that I see is that we have this area of supply on the H1 and H4. And notice how on M15, this area of supply was created right here. So we have to keep in mind this right here. I'll do it a different color so it's not the same. So notice this area of supply right here. It's not yet touched. It looks like it was touched, but it's not touched. So very likely price could do something like this. And then we continue to move from here. That's scenario one. Scenario two would be something like this. And then we break past this zone. And then we continue the pullback up until this area down here. You never know exactly what's going to happen in the market, but when we come in our session, that's depending what the session does, the volume that comes in that session, that's going to give us the key to what the market's going to do, if that makes sense. Because we're not going to just enter our random points. We actually want our entry confirmations on lower time frames. We want to see what the session does, where the volume is going. So these are two very likely scenarios. Price could use this area supply to pull back into this area of demand to continue the bullish move, or if price breaks past these areas of demand, we know that nothing is stopping price until down here. So we have to keep that in mind. That was a breakdown of XAU USD and GJ. I hope you guys liked it. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.